This is the final shiur number 6 of a 6-part series on birchat hachamah. In the previous shiurim, I described some of the themes and images associated with the mitzvah. The cosmological connotations of recognizing the return to the point of origin of the planetary orbit, what the sun symbolizes to a Jew historically, religiously, morally. Of course, this isn't just a mitzvah to look at planets and to consider their connotations. It's a mitzvah that occurs once in 28 years. And at a personal, existential level, it's a very, very moving and transforming experience. How many times in our lives are we zocheh to fulfill this mitzvah? It is immune, this mitzvah, to the routinization that plagues so much of our religious experience, one davening after another, one mitzvah after another. It's a mitzvah that leaps out at us, and forces us to consider issues beyond our day-to-day, beyond our routine, beyond our regimented schedule. Namely, or in other words, it's a quintessential cheshbon nefesh. It's important from time to time to take stock of where we are as people and as Ovdei Hashem. And an event like this literally shakes us up. On the one hand, it takes us out of our context. It broadens our horizons, literally and metaphorically. It reminds us that we're part of something so much larger than ourselves. And that type of perspective should help alleviate some of the pettiness, the small-mindedness, the tunnel vision, the laziness, the cowardice that impedes so much of our growth, that deters so much of our decision-making, that literally plagues the human experience. Ironically, as space travel has opened up the skies and the heavens, and the world has expanded, in many ways, ironically, that expansion has led to a contraction. Sometimes the larger our world, the less we can digest and process it, because we're forced to process too much. The hierarchy of who we are as people becomes disheveled or disoriented, and we shrink into ourselves, and we become more and more petty, as ironic as it sounds. There's a beautiful quote from Franz Kafka. Franz Kafka captured the voice of the generation, the lost generation between the two world wars. And he once said as follows: as a result of war, America has come to Europe. The boundaries, he had felt, had been blurred. The continents, he wrote, have shrunk together. A spark carries a man's voice around the world in an instant. We no longer live in space cut to human size, but on a small, lost star surrounded by millions of larger and smaller worlds. Solar space looms up like an act of vengeance. In its abysses, we lose more and more of our freedom and movement day by day. I believe it can't last much longer. The world is changing into a ghetto. The world is opening out, but we are driven into narrow defiles of paper. The only certainty is the chair one sits on. We live in straight lines, yet every man is in fact a labyrinth. Yet we are not antique heroes. So despite our pain, all we are is tragic comedians. And it's such a haunting and chilling description of a world opening out and a world expanding, but existentially and emotionally and socially a world shrinking and contracting because we live in such large space, and because we've lost the sense of our unique role in the universe, because we're just a star amongst many. So that loss of meaning has led to the existential crisis of modern man, and I don't think we've really recovered from that crisis. And this is a chance for us to recalibrate, step out of ourselves, remind ourselves that we're part of something larger, part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's universe, and the demystification of planets, which science has rendered, should somehow be corrected. There's a magic to our world. It's a magic that shines with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's majesty and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's wisdom. This is a chance, once in a while, very, very infrequently, to tap into that magic and to restore that sense of meaning and that sense of purpose. I think it also reminds us not just of the larger context which we're part of, but it also reminds us that the world is cyclical, and that this has been occurring every 28 years for thousands of years. And sometimes we lose sight of that cyclical nature. Of course, the fact that birchas hachamah is fixed this year to Pesach. Wednesday morning we'll recite birchas hachamah and remind ourselves of the cyclical nature of history. And that night, Wednesday evening, at the Seder, we'll recite Shebechol Dar Vadar, Omdim Aleinu Lachalosenu, V'Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Matzilenu Mi'adam. Sometimes we lose sight, sometimes we get a little bit fearful, as we should. I mean, some of the attacks and threats to the Jewish people, to the Jewish state, are unparalleled, surrounded on all sides. We're surrounded. The Achu K'Eish Kutzim, we're lit up like dry straw. Tzabuni Gam Sebavuni B'Shem Hashem Ki Amilam. We have to remind ourselves from time to time. This has happened before, it will happen again. These are cycles of Jewish history, and not just at a theoretical level, but just reminding yourself emotionally. When was the last Birchas Hachamah? 1981. And the one before that. And the one before that. 1953. And I'm losing the track. Before 53, 28 years, 1934. 1933. I gotta do this again. The one before that, 1925, and the one before that, 1897. And imagine all the Jews gathering in different countries, different continents, different hemispheres, and different conditions of history. In each case, the sun returned to its point of origin. The vicissitudes of history took very heavy tolls on the Jewish people, but we recovered, and we're here, and we're as eternal as the sun, as that pasuk in Yeshaya, which I mentioned in part 5, suggests. And finally, not just an opportunity for us to attune ourselves to the cyclical nature of history and of Jewish history, but ultimately on a very personal level. There are times during our year, during our experiences of the Hashem, that does remind us of the passage of time, of the tragedy of wasted time, of the fear of death, that just force us to stare at that existential mirror and ask the haunting but penetrating question, Im kain lama ze anochi? What do I live for? Sometimes we get lost in time. Time just marches on quietly, indefatigably, and we lose sight of the fact that time is elapsing, that potential is being squandered. Perhaps our lives are becoming empty rather than full of meaning. And there are moments that we reflect quickly upon those questions. I think every month we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Birchas HaChodesh, Chaim Shel Bracha, Chaim Shel Shalom, Chaim Shel Parnasa, Chaim Shel Chilas HaSamos, Chaim Shel Yesh B'Miyar Shamayim. We think about the next month. We realize a month has passed. We stand at the doorstep of another month. The unknown, the uncertainty of the next month haunts us. We hope that HaKadosh Baruch Hu steadies and stabilizes the next month's experience. On an annual basis, I think everyone is hit very powerfully, very potently by the Tefillah Natan Tokef Kiddushat Hayom, Mi Yechya, Mi Amos, Kama Yavrun, Kama Yibarayon, Mi Yishafel, Mi Yarum. And we realize that we're embarking on a journey of the unknown, a journey of uncertainty of an entire year's span. But I think that fear, and that healthy fear of the unknown, a fear of the unknown which is designed to focus our efforts, to awaken our interest towards our potential and towards maximizing that potential, that little chill sets into our heart, and then a few minutes later it departs.